Alright, thank God it's fantasy football season. I'm Buster Brown, and the show is Redemption Rehab. If you tuned in today, it's for one reason. It's to start winning championships in fantasy football. Today, we're talking about my top picks on the weekly waiver wire that'll help you get the job done. So let's head over to the weekly waiver wire report
and check out the facts.
Okay, here we are looking at the waiver wire for week 2 of the NFL season. As you can see behind me, this is the schedule. So if you're going to pick up a player, you should know who they're playing. And this is the schedule for week 2 on rtsports.com. When you get a chance, head over there and check them out. Right now, we're going to check out the waiver wire report for running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, and quarterbacks so that you can compete in week 2. Maybe you didn't draft a handcuff for a running back. Maybe you're weak at wide receiver. Maybe you need a quarterback. We're going to take a look at that right now, starting out with running backs. Okay, one of the running backs we think you should have your eye on in week 2 of the NFL season. It depends on whether you're in a 10-man, 12-man, or 14-man league. Might be this guy. And it's from the Indianapolis Colts, and his name is Nyheim Hines. As you can see here, Nyheim Hines had 7 carries for 28 yards and a TD. He also, down here, had 8 catches for 45 yards and 1 TD on 8 targets. That's important because the guy that he's replacing is this guy, Marlon Mack. Marlon Mack had a great day, started out, and he got hurt. He hurt his Achilles, and he's out for the year. So picking up his handcuff, which is Nyheim Hines, is important. The other running back is Jonathan Taylor, who had a big day too. As you can see here, 6 receptions for 67 yards on 6 targets, and he ran the ball 9 times for 22 yards. He might not be available in your league, probably not. I mean, if you're in a 10-man league, he probably is, but we mentioned him just in case. You should go out and get Nyheim Hines. As you can see, he had a big day, scored 20-some points. With the injury of Marlon Mack, he's going to be a player the rest of the year. Let's take a look at another running back you should go out and get. And it's this guy, James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. The reason he is available in most leagues is because Leonard Fournette got cut and he's in Tampa Bay. The starting running back after that was Raquel Armstead. He's got the coronavirus, so he's out probably the entire month of September. So this guy's getting his shot, and he had 16 carries for 62 yards. And he also caught 1 pass for 28 yards on 1 target. When Raquel Armstead comes back, which will probably be a month, he's probably going to be the starting running back. But for a month, you get a chance to see what this guy can do, James Robinson. I would check out his schedule before you put a bid on him. And if he's available in your league, and he likely is, he might have been picked up prior to the season started. And I would put him in your lineup because he's going to have a big game for the next 2 or 3 weeks until Raquel Armstead comes back. Okay, another running back we really like for this week, and he might not be available in your 12-man leagues, but he probably is in your 10-man leagues, and it's this guy, Malcolm Brown for the Los Angeles Rams. At 18 carries for 79 yards and 2 TDs. He also can catch the ball in the backfield. 3 receptions for 31 yards on 4 targets. Whether he's available in your league or not, I don't know. If you're a 12-man league, probably not, but in a 10-man league, he is. I'd go get him. He's going to probably be the workhorse for half the season before maybe Cam Akers, one of these other young rookies, take over. So Darrell Henderson Jr. is a second-year player that might get some playing time later in the year. Let's check out some other players we like. Okay, another running back you should be looking at in your league is this guy, Adrian Peterson. As you can see right here, he had 14 carries for 93 yards, and he caught some balls too. Right down here, you can see that he had 3 catches for 21 yards on 3 targets. I'd be really careful with him because DeAndre Swift and Kerryon Johnson are on this team. I'm not exactly sure why they played him so much, Adrian Peterson, but if he's available in your league, he's worth picking up and playing possibly this week. Let's take a look at some other running backs I like that might be on your waiver wire in week 2. Okay, here we are taking a look at Frank Gore with the injury to Le'Veon Bell. Looks like Frank Gore's going to get some playing time. Now, they have a tough schedule coming up, so I wouldn't spend a ton of money on him. If you have Le'Veon Bell, you should have drafted Frank Gore as his handcuff, but if you didn't, as you can see right here, Frank Gore had 6 carries for 24 yards. But that's not the guy that got the production around the end zone. It was this guy, Josh Adams. As you can see here, he had 2 carries for 8 yards and a touchdown. And then down here, he caught 2 balls for 14 yards. One of these 2 guys is going to do well this season with Le'Veon Bell out. He could be out for a couple weeks. Maybe his hamstring's bad. So keep an eye on that. One of these guys might be worth picking up. Okay, here's another guy that plays for the Miami Dolphins that a lot of people are going to be going after. I doubt he's on anybody's roster in any league. It's this guy over here, Myles Gaskin. As you can see, he had 9 carries for 40 yards, and if you come down here, he had 4 catches for 26 yards. Hey, that's pretty good production. He only got maybe 10, 11 points, but for some reason the coach isn't high on Matt Breida or Jordan Howard, even though Jordan Howard got the touchdown. I'd be looking at Myles Gaskin, and he might be worth throwing on your bench just in case he has a breakout season. Okay, I've got a guy here that plays for the Los Angeles Chargers. He might be someone you want to pick up and put on the stash on your bench. It's not because of an injury, but because this kid can play football, and he's on a team going through transition, and it's this guy over here, Joshua Kelley. Look what he did against Cincinnati's weak defense. He had 12 carries for 60 yards and a touchdown. That's pretty good. He didn't catch any balls, but neither did Austin Eckler down here. This is a guy that a lot of people drafted in the 2nd round, maybe the 1st round of their draft. You can see here Joshua Kelley's going to get some playing time, especially because Justin Jackson didn't get the job done. So that's somebody I'd keep an eye on. Okay, we got one more running back we want to show you for the waiver wire in week 2, and it's this kid from San Francisco. He's been on their team the last 2 years after playing for Minnesota for 3 years. He's a good running back, and his name is Jerick McKinnon. As you can see right here, Jerick McKinnon had 3 carries for 24 yards, but that's not why he's valuable. It's because he can catch the ball out of the backfield. As you can see here, if you're in a PPR league, he had 3 catches for 20 yards and a touchdown. Hey, look, he hasn't played in a couple years. They hung on to him. They paid him a bunch of money to be a backup. So I think you might find that this kid can play football, and you should consider putting him on your bench in case you need a running back later in the year. When we come back, we're going to be looking at some wide receivers that you should be picking up and considering in week 2 of the NFL season. Okay, here we are looking at wide receivers you should be considering in week 2 of the NFL season. And a guy that had a big game on Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. Atlanta was down big, so they had to throw the ball every game. I got to preface this by letting you know he did get hurt. He is in concussion protocol, and his name is Russell Gage. As you can see here, he had 9 receptions for 114 yards on 12 targets. I mentioned Russell Gage in our sleeper picks at wide receiver and on videos we did earlier in the year, along with other players like Greg Ward, who plays for Philadelphia, also had a good game. These are young players that are up and coming, and if you need a wide receiver, he might not have a game like this every week, and he is probably in concussion protocol because he took a big hit from the safety that Seattle acquired from the Jets. His name's Adams. I mean, he laid him out. So if he plays, he might have a good week for you this week, and you can stick him on your bench. He's a good player. Let's take a look at a couple more wide receivers I like for week 2. Okay, here's a couple good wide receivers from Jacksonville that had a good game. They are missing D.D. Westbrook, so when he comes back, it's going to be a crowded wide receiver room. But he wasn't playing in week 1, so it could affect how these guys do. And it's these 2 guys right here. Keelan Cole Sr. had 5 catches for 47 yards and a TD on 5 targets. And the guy below him, Laviska Shenault Jr., had 3 catches for 37 yards and a touchdown on 4 targets. Look, we mentioned Laviska Shenault in our rookie wide receivers that we previewed earlier in April. You should have known who this guy was if you had watched those videos. We told you he was going to be a player and a high draft choice, and here he is scoring a touchdown in his first game. He might be worth picking up. So is Keelan Cole Sr. and putting him on your bench. A couple guys we mentioned earlier in the year as breakout potential type players was these guys over here. Scotty Miller for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 5 catches for 73 yards. And we also mentioned Justin Watson, who didn't have a big game, 1 catch on 2 targets. We like Scotty Miller, and we think you should pick him up. I mean, Tom Brady likes the Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, Julian Edelman type player, and this kid fits that MO. So you might want to pick him up and put him on your bench. Okay, the next wide receiver and the last one we're going to mention here is for the Tennessee Titans. We mentioned him last year, his first year with Tennessee. Used to play down in Tampa Bay, and it's this guy, Adam Humphries. He's a possession receiver. He had 6 receptions for 47 yards on 7 targets. As you can see here, he's in the mix with the receivers. We're going to mention Jonnu Smith on our tight ends later. But we think Adam Humphries with the 7 targets might be a guy you want to throw on your bench just in case you need help later in the year. Okay, when we come back, we're going to be looking at some tight ends we like in week 2 that you might find on your waiver wire. Okay, here's a couple good tight ends. I doubt that Dallas Goedert is available in any of the leagues that's going to listen to this. We mentioned him last year and this year and told you that we really liked him. We're going to try to get him on every team, and here he is, 8 receptions, 101 yards, and a TD on 9 targets. We love him. If you can get him in your waiver wire, go out and get him. But the guy that's in most leagues that's available is this guy. He's been around for 3 or 4 years. His name's Logan Thomas. He had 4 receptions for 37 yards and a touchdown on 8 targets. He usually doesn't get the touchdown, but that's about what he gets every week, that 3-4 catch on 6-7 targets. He does get it in the end zone, so he might be worth a flyer. Tight ends are hard to come by on the waiver wire, but he'd be one if you can get him. Okay, this next guy is like a blast from the past. His name's Jordan Reed. Used to play for the Washington Redskins back in the day. As you can see here, George Kittle had 4 catches on 44 yards on 5 targets, but the problem was he hyperextended the knee. He hyperextended last year and missed a handful of games. So if that happens again, this is the guy you're going to want to get, is Jordan Reed. And you can see he only had 2 catches for 12 yards on 2 targets. But the kid can play. He's healthy. If George Kittle's going to miss any time, I can see picking this guy up and getting some points out of him, especially against who they're playing this week, which I think is the New York Jets. So I would think that might be a good play for this week until George Kittle comes back. Okay, this next guy is Jonnu Smith down in Tennessee. We've mentioned him for the last couple years. Finally, he's not backing anybody up, and he's got the whole show to himself, and he's really hard to tackle. He prides himself on not being tackled by the first guy. And as you can see right here, Jonnu Smith had 4 catches for 36 yards and a TD on 7 targets. That's pretty good for him. I think that Jonnu Smith's due for a breakout season. He's probably in a contract year, so he could really help you this year. Go get him. We got one more tight end we're going to show you, and his name's O.J. Howard. Okay, here we are looking at O.J. Howard from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Everybody wanted to draft Rob Gronkowski, and as you can see right here, Rob Gronkowski, 2 catches for 11 yards on 3 targets. Guy that's been around down in Tampa Bay, Cameron Brate, no catches on 1 target. And the guy we mentioned in our daily fantasy sports segment on FanDuel that you can also watch that comes out on Fridays to help you with your DFS picks. And look, O.J. Howard had 4 catches for 36 yards and a touchdown on 6 targets. Look, we think he's going to have a breakout year because Tom Brady likes to throw the tight end. This kid's athletic. He didn't have a quarterback that was accurate. Jameis Winston was kind of erratic, so he didn't put the ball where it was always catchable, but Tom Brady does. So we think O.J. Howard's worth picking up. If he's on your waiver wire, go get him. When we come back, we're going to be looking at some quarterbacks that you should be thinking about to add to your roster. It's a good idea to have a lot of quarterbacks here because of COVID-19. Could be a point in the season where players get it and half the team gets sick and you may be out of a quarterback. So I'd stock up on them. We got some quarterbacks you're going to like coming up for this week. Okay, a quarterback we like and we think you should stash on your bench, at least for after this week, is this guy here, Gardner Minshew. Look, 19 of 20. I mean, that's ridiculous. He only incompleted one pass. That's ridiculous. Most players don't do that. He had 173 yards and 3 touchdowns for a quarterback rating of 142. That's the main reason they beat the Indianapolis Colts, was because of this guy. He's got a difficult schedule next week against going to Tennessee, so they're like a 10-point underdog, so I wouldn't play him this week. But I tell you what, let's take a look at his schedule in the upcoming weeks. He plays the Miami Dolphins, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Houston Texans, the Detroit Lions, comes back and plays against the Chargers secondary that's banged up after his bye, and the Houston Texans, Green Bay Packers. So he's got some games that are coming up where this guy can actually produce. And I'm going to tell you what, if he doesn't produce, he's probably on his way out, because they're talking about drafting the kid out of Clemson. If they keep winning games, they're not going to have a shot at that guy. So picking up Gardner Minshew, I would do it. When we come back, we're going to show you another quarterback you need to go out and get. Okay, another quarterback we really like, and never have been a big fan of his, but it's this guy, Kirk Cousins. He was 19 of 25 for 259 yards, 2 TDs, an interception, and a quarterback rating of 118 against a decent Green Bay defense. You know, his schedule coming up is actually pretty good. He plays against the Indianapolis Colts, the Tennessee Titans, the Houston Texans, Seattle Seahawks, and the Atlanta Falcons before they go on bye. And then he comes back and plays against Green Bay and the Detroit Lions. Look, that's a pretty good schedule, and if you need a quarterback, or maybe the quarterback you drafted, they're not that great, hey, I just gave you 2 that you should be considering for week 2, and I showed you their schedules. So when we come back, we're going to be taking a look at some defenses that we like and a couple kickers, so stick around. Okay, if you want a good kicker that you can rely on every week, that the offense is going to put up a bunch of points because their defense isn't very good and they're always playing from behind like they did against the Las Vegas Raiders, is this guy down here, is Joey Sly. Joey Sly's accurate kicker against the Las Vegas. He was 3 for 3. 100%. His long was 47. He did miss an extra point, but he does score a lot of points every week. So I would consider picking him up if you don't have a kicker, or maybe your kicker got cut, which several of them usually do after week 1. I like Joey Sly, and I'd go out and get him. When we come back, we're going to show you 2 defenses that might be on your waiver wire that you should go out and get and plug in for week 2. Okay, in our DFS show last week, we recommended the Washington Redskins. Man, they sacked the heck out of Carson Wentz, and we really liked them. If you get a chance, listen to our daily fantasy show on the weekends. We'll tell you who to pick on FanDuel. And this week, we're not high on Washington this week because they're playing Arizona. They should have a decent day, but you could consider Washington. But the 2 defenses I really like this week is Cleveland Browns right here. They're playing on Thursday night, so you have to pick them up on Wednesday. Their pass rush against the Cincinnati Bengals beat up offensive line. They should be able to get to the rookie quarterback, Joe Burrows. He's going to be in trouble on Thursday night. It's a short week, and the Browns are going to get to him, and it's going to be a long night for Joe Burrows. And the other team we really like is down here, and it's the Los Angeles Rams against the Philadelphia Eagles. They're coming across the country, so it's a risk. They're probably not even on your waiver wire, but if they are, you can consider it. I like Cleveland more, maybe even Washington. But I tell you what, the Rams are going to have a big day because the Eagles are banged up. I mean, every single time I hear a injury report, somebody on the Eagles is banged up. They lost 3 starters on their offensive line, several Pro Bowlers. They lost people on defense. So this team is in jeopardy of losing a bunch of games. And Carson Wentz could be in big trouble against a good pass rush for the Los Angeles Rams this Sunday at 1 o'clock. So I consider picking up those defenses. Okay, that's it. That's our weekly waiver wire report for week 2. Hopefully you pick up some of these players we mentioned and take home a victory on your way to a championship in 2020. I'm Buster Brown. The show is called Redemption Rehab. Good luck.